all the stuff they didn't want us to talk about because they wanted us to only talk about Charlie Kirk, which is important. But one of the intentions was to get our eye off the ball of NATO and the U.S. empire, Western empire, imperialist machine, Israel, U.S., the whole thing. Get our minds off of geopolitics and focus on the culture war and the right versus left theater here. Well, we're going to push back on that now. And what better way to do that but bring in our next guest, who happens to be a geopolitical expert and has been following all of these illegal wars and occupations and maliciousness by NATO and watching the rise of BRICS happening as well. So we're going to have a discussion now with the one and only, please welcome back to the show, Don DeBAR.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hey, Don, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing well. Interesting discussion. I've been listening for a few minutes, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad you guys are doing this. I'm glad this is being done for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I live in New York, in Ossining, which is about 30 miles north of Manhattan. And at the time, I was working in Peekskill, which is about 15 miles north of me. And between my house and where I worked was the Indian Point nuclear power plants. And I remember the day, September 11th, 2001. It was a gorgeous day. It was the way it is out here now in New York. The sun was out and pretty clear sky, very clear sky, as a matter of fact. And I had heard when I was leaving the house about 8:45 that a plane had hit the World Trade Center. And I thought of the incident, I think it was in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, where a plane had hit the Empire State Building, and said, wow, they must have been really off course. New York does have 3 major airports, sort of triangulating on lower Manhattan, between JFK and Newark and LaGuardia. But I got to the office about 9:05, and they were hovering. Somebody pulled the TV down from in the file room and had it set up in the middle of the reception area in the biggest part of the office. And they were all like huddled around it watching this. And when I came in, almost as soon as I walked in, the second plane hit. And as soon as it became apparent that that's what happened, out of my mouth came, oh my God, the Reichstag fire. And these kids in the room didn't know what the hell I was talking about. But right away, it was obvious that something really bad had happened that was not 2 accidental plane crashes. And right away, I understood these guys are going to want to go to war with somebody like now. Anyone really following this stuff back then understood this from moment one. And so, people argue about every theory that there is about who done it. It's obvious that whoever makes policy here either allowed it to happen or did it overtly or both. You have a pretty large assemblage of nasty characters. But the more important part isn't that they killed 2,900 people or whatever that day and blew up a building that Silverstein couldn't figure out how to unload this white elephant. He liquidated it to cash. But rather what was going to follow. And it was pretty clear almost from that moment what was going to follow. We found out very quickly about Wesley Clark's list, the one he spoke of that they had for the 7 countries, and that had been a list compiled well before September 11th. They managed to roll out, this document of legislation to just happen to be laying around for just such an occasion, and ran it through the Congress almost unanimously, essentially suspending the Constitution. They were identifying, and placing blame everywhere they could. And they started turning the screws on people here in the United States almost immediately. One person I know was an early victim of this was the attorney Lynn Stewart here in New York, who was the attorney of record for the guy they call the Blind Sheik, who was in prison in New York City in connection with the bombing at the World Trade Center back in the early 90s. She had been handling his affairs more or less, dealing with the government. You know, he's in prison for life. He's blind. He's old. She's handling his affairs. And John Ashcroft goes on television showboating very shortly after September 11th. Either Letterman or Johnny Carson announcing he's going to indict Lynn Stewart for harboring and giving aid to terrorists. And she ended up in prison after 3 years worth of hell in courts in New York City, the federal courts. And pretty much until she died, a couple of months before she died, she was let out. This happened everywhere. You could see people were afraid to talk. You could see they really cranked up the war machine. I've been watching this stuff since I was waiting for them to come drag me down to Whitehall Street to go get killed in Vietnam back in 1970s, early 70s. And I was still, and I've been watching media forever. I was amazed at the multi-channel TV show that was suddenly put together across all the station, the air TV stations, cable stations, the movie channels, everything that had multimedia on a carrier. They had this constant propaganda show almost immediately. It's amazing that they were able to arrange all of this stuff, even if they had prepared for it. And then we end up, what was it, October? They started talking about Iraq, and in less than a year, they were voting to go to war with Iraq, and like 5 months after that, going to war with Iraq. They went to Afghanistan like weeks after, not even, I think a week and a half or something, before the first major action was taken in Afghanistan. They lit the whole place on fire. And if you look at it on balance, they've probably killed 1 to 4 million people in the region since 2001, since September 2001. The official count here of people that were killed on that date from the airplanes and collateral damage is just shy of 3,000 people, including the so-called terrorists, the 18 or whatever people that were suspected of doing this thing. Just Gaza. Forget Afghanistan, where they fought. They started a war there in the 70s and destroyed that country several times over. And Iraq, where they said at least 1 million people died. Even before this war, 500,000 people died. Madeleine Albright admitted 500,000 children died in Iraq of starvation as a consequence of U.S. policy, which she said was, well, it's okay.
Yeah, it was worth it. Yeah.
In the whole region, millions of people have been killed. Just Gaza, we're talking something in the vicinity of 100,000 people in the last 2 years, including somewhere between, depending on whose estimate you want, 15 to 30 or more thousand children. Supposedly, because they're collateral damage because of the need to take out Hamas in the middle of these human shields. And then they wonder, why exactly would anyone target the World Trade Center, which is it's like on Wall Street. So, even the official, the propaganda stories don't hold water with each other.
No, they don't. You go through that commission, you report, nothing makes any sense in there at all. The fact that even we talk about Bush and Cheney, whether they were even under oath or not, or we don't have access, that it was all in a closed door. We know that nothing, you go through this thing, none of it makes any sense. Yet there's still a lot of people that are okay with that not making sense. And I think that's the brainwash, that's the wiring that they've done to us. Yeah. And those are the same people that are going to fall for the next one. And they have, and they're not saying, wait a minute, this doesn't line up.
And don't forget, jet fuel cannot burn, high enough to melt steel beams. And they just put it in the report and expect us not to question it. So agreed on every point.
But even on his face. So the official story is that, everywhere in the media today here, there are people sobbing tearfully in memory of this or that. And we will never forget and always remember and yada, 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 yada. Over these 2,900 people, which is tragic, and they are victims of somebody's nefarious crap. And I
can I add that the other victims are the young men and women who were tricked into fighting for our country, and they were vulnerable and susceptible, and they were targeted. And we remember when Michael Moore used to make good films back in the day, and he showed us how they go to poor places and they give you all these incentives and say you're going to do something for your country, and then you go out and die and murder people that for something that made no sense. So those are also victims of the capture, and the and now a lot of them that are still alive today are still living with the trauma of going through that and realizing that moment they realize, wait a minute, we were the bad guys the whole time. That's got to add to the trauma on top of it. So I just wanted to point that part out too. A lot of people are probably thinking about that right now today, being it's the 24-year mark, and probably thinking about what could I have done differently? How did I not know any better? How did I not see it? So I want to throw that out too.
Yeah, I'm just saying facially, you've got all of this somber, spiritual, whatever other crap they're peddling, about this particular event with a body count of 2,900 in Gaza, which is about the same size, a little larger than Manhattan, slightly, maybe 30% larger geographically. It has about the same population as Manhattan, about 2 million people. The casualties there aren't 2,900, but almost, or at least 100,000, and look, risking 1 million. And by casualties, I'm talking about dead. Now you're talking, in addition to that, 1 million to 1.5 million people that are homeless and being driven out of their state, let alone out of their homes. And again, you've had at least 5, maybe 30 times as many children alone murdered in Gaza as the total death toll from New York and the airplane in Pennsylvania and the Pentagon, if anybody really died there. And yet there's not a mention of this other when they're funding more bombs to send over to Israel and or directly drop on Gaza.
Yeah, never forget only applies if it benefits like our foreign policy and Israel's foreign policy. That's the only time never forget matters. They're supposed to forget. Their feelings don't matter. They should forget that.
Yeah,
as a whole. So, at this moment, we've got the incident that you have a situation where the U.S. essentially declares war, initiates a war plan against Russia somewhere in 2013.
Yep.
Actualizes it in terms of an overthrow of the government in Ukraine in 2014. I mean, they were doing this. They had done this already 2006, 2007 in Georgia. So you have, and elsewhere, other countries bordering Russia. But now they're going for the jugular, and took charge of Ukraine and basically declared war on Russia from there, first killing whatever Russians were inside the national borders, and then becoming a launch pad for weapon fire into Russia. That this has ripened over the period, last 12 years, to a point where manufactured weapons from the U.S. and the UK and Germany and elsewhere have been funneled through Poland and elsewhere, but largely through Poland into Ukraine, and then used to bomb Russian cities and make war on Russia. Russia had warned that introducing these weapons and troops into the war in Ukraine made the delivery paths and mechanisms fair game. If you're going to drive a truck full of weapons that are going to be used against me up to the border, I'm not waiting for you to get to the border to hand it off so they can start shooting. I'm going to take it. This is normal warfare. So what happens apparently the other day is that rather than that kind of a response, in the middle of an exchange of weaponry, air power, some drones that either Russia had control of or that someone else had control of, and they tried to identify them as Russian, encroached on or near the border with Poland, and the entire chorus here tried to call that a violation of Article 5 of the NATO Charter, meaning that this was an act of war taken against a NATO member, which requires a full retaliatory response from NATO. And as a matter of fact, Article 5 reads exactly this way. The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America, and we're talking about Europe, shall be considered an attack against them all. And consequently, they agree that if such an armed attack occurs, each of them, in the exercise of the right of individual or collective self-defense, as recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith, individually and in concert with the other parties, such action as it deems necessary, including the use of armed force, to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. So what they were, after this incident was leaked out or became known, it was followed up immediately with a massive public relations effort across the board, from the Atlantic to the Telegraph to the Times, and across the U.S. media today, musing over the application of Article 5, and then settling on Article 4, which is the prelude to Article 5. The parties will consult together whenever, in the opinion of any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of any of the parties is threatened. And they claim that this was a violation of that article. Now, Article 6 of the NATO Charter says that for the purpose of Article 5, an armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the territory of any of the parties in Europe, North America, Algerian departments of France, the territory of Turkey, or on the islands under the jurisdiction of any of the parties in the North Atlantic area, on the forces, vessels, or aircrafts of any of the parties. And that, to me, is the most important thing here, because while that little escapade was going on in Europe, Israel attacked a UK-flagged ship attempting to deliver aid to Gaza.
Yep.
And nobody is invoking Article 5 over that.
No.
Why
That's a great point, Don. Why would you make this a NATO issue when it serves your purpose, which is the vilification of Russia? And we know that whole thing. Right? It's been Putin's the next Hitler. He's taken over Europe, taken over the world. But meanwhile, Netanyahu can do no wrong, right? Even though we saw this flotilla it's gotten attacked twice now, and this is the third one, and no one's talking about that. That's a great point. Yo, where is NATO?
Well,
when we need to call out an actual attack on somebody bringing aid? Yeah, go ahead, Jay.
I can tell you why. It's because the IDF is the most moral army in the world. They don't do anything bad. And so if they did that, they were clearly justified, and NATO was wrong. You know, the UK, the British ship was wrong for trying to deliver food to people. And it's understandable that the IDF would want to bomb a ship with food, right? That's the real, they're the real heroes. They're the real heroes.
And now let's go back. I think it was 2010 when the IDF landed on a couple of boats that were flagged by Turkey. They had the Turkish flag, also a NATO member, and executed face down on the deck, gunshot to the back of the head, 9 Turkish nationals, one of whom was also an American citizen. And not a word about that either, did we?
Wow.
Yep.
Well, look, as far as nobody doing anything about it, what is your thoughts on if you saw that there was an actual ground movement happening before this third flotilla took off? Because we've been following the flotilla situation because they've all been stopped. This one, we saw Italian workers get in the streets and say, if you attack this one, we're going to shut down our workforce. We're going to shut down our trade with Israel. Have we seen a follow-up on that? And does that make a difference? Because from our vantage point, it's like when people get in the streets, because the governments aren't going to do it, but the people are the workforce. Does that affect Israel? Would that actually make a difference?
Well,
And I haven't seen if they've put their words to action, because now we've had this official attack. Are they going to halt work in Italy? Have you looked into any of that, Don?
This is even a bigger question because in France, the same. I mean, they're already in the street, the yellow
Right,
vests
course,
and,
yeah.
and others. And you know, you have all these nested contradictions. So let's say, for example, you are able to topple some governments behind this. And if you're looking at like the power centers in terms of making decisions over who NATO is going to fight, the real big stuff, we don't really have a seat at the chessboard to do any. So you take this one down and this one down. We don't have a strategic positioning to be able to take advantage of this. And I don't know who we have available to us that would serve as like an officer corps, like generals and people that do military strategy. They have them, and they've got all these friggin' computers and every other damn thing too that they invented to be able to do that stuff. As a matter of fact, here we have, for example, okay, so there are two possibilities. I concede that. I don't know. Either the dissent between some part of the state or the deep state or whatever and Trump is a shit show and all show, and that there's not a real contradiction there, or there is a real contradiction there. And I don't know what it sounds in, but perhaps a fundamental difference in certain aspects of their policy. All of them want to steal every fucking thing they can put their hands on and kill anybody that gets in their way. I have no doubt about that. None of them, so we're not talking about that, but we are talking about in each phase of this, as it goes on, certain people, as they have their hands on the levers, they do stuff. And so what things is this group going to do and that group going to do in the next period? And where does that leave us? Like, what's left after that? And I'm thinking about, for example, Trump's horrendous behavior with respect to Israel. Mm-hmm. And the fact that apparently, again, like I said, it may all be shit show, but apparently there's this contradiction with a good part of the media, all of the Democratic politicians, a good part of the Republican, institutional politicians, whatever, and some other more powerful players, that if we push Trump out, who do we have to take his place? And what will they do next? Like, will they back out of, will they stop the killing in Gaza? And then what happens everywhere else on the chessboard with them? Like, I don't know. Like, all I see is this march towards like a real world war. Everybody says we're in World War III. We've probably been in it. It's probably still World War II.
I haven't heard that one yet, Don. That's good. We're still in World War II. That's good. I love it.
Whatever all that is, I mean, just looking at these two incidents, where on the one hand, You've got this fabricated, causes Bella to invoke NATO's Article 5, and now it's time for war with Russia over those little drones. And on the other hand, like a complete, I won't even say abrogation, like a complete trashing, like and throwing into a furnace the whole Geneva Convention about diplomacy and everything else, where they Qatar invites diplomats in to sit down and negotiate an end to a fucking Holocaust. And what they do is provide targeting information so they can blow up the fucking building they're in. This has never happened, to my knowledge. As bad as the Chinese embassy incident in Yugoslavia and this kind of crap. This it's so obvious in front of everyone. And so if you are going to fabricate a cause for war with Russia over here, and you're going to tell the Russians, I mean, at the same time they're doing this shit in Doha, they're saying, hey, why don't Xi and Putin come meet with us in Florida, where some people, depending on your take on how they feel about Trump, some people might think of that as a threefer, and that building will get like 900 atomic bombs on it or something. How the hell, if you completely abrogate any norms with respect to diplomacy, do you brush with nuclear holocaust and expect to not fall into it?
Yeah.
How do they not do that?
I think they've been working towards this little by little. This Qatar situation had come out of nowhere. We've been trained by this. There's a blueprint to this. We saw it with Iran, right? Israel targeted the negotiators at the table in Iran, and Trump did the same thing. He said, I didn't have anything to do with that. And then he was like, I'm very angry. I think Israel went too far. And then you had, like, right on cue, you had the MAGAs going, you see, he got angry at Netanyahu. So all you people that think that Trump is controlled by Israel, look, didn't you see what he tweeted? He got really mad. Well, this is the same thing, but you're right. It's we've never seen it at this level. I mean, you targeted the negotiators at the table, and then Trump does the same thing right on cue. I had nothing to do with that.
Then announce within a day or two after that you don't intend to ever allow a Palestinian state to exist within a few days of taking out the negotiators. So we already know that they've taken out the Iranian negotiators. They're talking about nukes. They're gonna hit Iran again. They're going back into Hamas. And guess what? America has to pay for everything. Because we have to pay for everything, and they don't talk about that part in Israel. They don't say, they say we're gonna go do this, and we'll drag the Americans along. They'll have our backs, but they don't talk about the fact that their state wouldn't exist were it not for unconditional support from Americans.
We're looking at the timing of this one, particularly Qatar, because we know that the Charlie Kirk incident occurred and got everybody's mind off of that one, which just happened within hours before, not to mention the 6 different countries or 5 others aside from Qatar that Netanyahu has been bombing the crap out of in the last 72 hours before that. So that's a massive distraction happening now and is allowing him to continue going. This came in today. I mean, look, it's like eerie to see the date below this, 9/11 on the 24th anniversary. This came in. Israel's Netanyahu is saying, we are going to fulfill our promise that there will be no Palestine state. This place belongs to us. So he can get away with this in the timing of today when everyone's mind is on civil war because of Charlie Kirk and those trans with their sharpshooting. That's the problem. Yeah. See, then that's where we're at. And this is where we're trying to talk about this bait and switch. Trump's in on it, right? Like there's no question. This is these fake ass over the top. I didn't know about that. This is the theater. This is why they put him in the assignment, right?
If people could just learn people could just learn a simple lesson, follow the money. All this could have been predicted. Yeah. If you looked at Trump's campaign donors, it would have been obvious what was going to happen. However, the difference is he knows it's unpopular and he'll at least attempt to pretend that he's a peacemaker. He calls himself the candidate of peace and then changes the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Wow. And his people still believe he's the guy who wants peace. I mean, come on, guys.
I think that the Department of War thing, I think, is actually sort of a de-Orwellianism because it's
It's
never
good in
been
that
a
way. You're right.
Department
Yeah.
of Defense, not ever.
Yeah. And it's funny because I heard someone make the point now they're going to have to justify increasing the budget for the Department of War. And they're going to have to say that out loud. We need to increase the amount we spend on war. It sounded a little bit better when they used the euphemism, but now that they're saying the straight up word, you're right. It is beneficial to us. So in that way, but I think Trump is trying to rile people up though. He wants Americans to believe he's using the American military in the right way. And his base believes that using it against Venezuela is the right way because this is our territory over here. And we can do that to Venezuela because they are right next to us. So they have to listen to us.
Look how obvious his Instagram page. It's war is everywhere. War at the top, Secretary of War, title, United States Secretary of War. You got the website.
I like the website.
And funny story, Matt, I gotta point this out. Considering our last conversation, have you ever seen the tattoo on Pete Hegseth's chest?
Oh, I did not see the tattoo.
You've never seen it? Go look it up. It's actually a Knights Templar cross.
Wow.
Oh boy.
This guy.
Just saying.
These guys were handpicked. By the way, people who think that, you know, when our president gets elected, he can bring in his people. No, they get assigned him. We know that Obama got his entire cabinet assigned to him. They were all Citigroup. And Trump, make no mistake, he didn't sit down with J.D. Vance and say, oh, I really like what you're doing with your little technocratic friends, and I think it's perfect for what we're doing with Make America. No, he was told, this is your guy. That's how Pete Hegseth, no different. This is your guy. So this is how it works. These people are not, it's not Emperor Trump. It certainly wasn't Emperor Biden. He was Sleepy Joe. That actually was the correct title for him. But this is the system we're in. It's a rigged system where we're running around during election season trying to figure out who's going to take our country back when they're just the next puppet being put into place. We got to educate people on this. This is if it's not obvious now, I don't know when it will ever be. That's where I'm at. Hey, Dawn, can I throw this out? So
go ahead.
We were talking about Putin earlier. We were talking about these other nuisance that we have to create these wars, create the Ukraine war, create this fear. You got the Democrats focusing on Russia all these years. You got Republicans focusing on China. You got both parties. They were going on about North Korea for so long. All of our Hollywood movies indicate that these are the bad guys, not us. We're the good guys going around saving the world, whether we're Top Gun or that crazy, stupid movie, The Interview, where we have to, Seth Rogen and James Franco have to stop Kim Jong-un before he blows us up. And I admit, I fell for that one at the time. But do you think now, and I hope there's a little bit of good news with all the horrible stuff going on, do you think now it's harder and harder for the media to do their job, which is to protect these garbage narratives that they've been successful at selling to a lot of us this time? I admit, I fell for the Kim Jong-un wants to nuke us. I hope they don't put that movie out, and Sony might piss off Kim Jong. I fell for that in 2014. But this media, I think, is having a harder time with it because we see this. This is somebody trying to pretend that this will go. That, oh, look at this! Everyone gathered in China. They're all, oh my God, they're all in one place. And India's there too. Oh, what are we gonna do about that? But look at our other big bad dictators that are all taking over the world at the same time. It's like the group of supervillains. They're trying to sell it as a new axis of evil. Isn't it harder and harder for them to sell this now, considering the state we're in, the state NATO's in? And then let me just follow this. This is the one I was going to share earlier. Again, if Russia, China, North Korea are the axis of evil, what do we call Israel, the U.S. government, and NATO, who have destroyed a dozen nations and killed millions? Right. Don DeBAR, where are we at with this? Is there any hope here that this narrative is dying?
I got to say, you got a lot of heart for admitting that they put one over on you with that.
They did.
Listen, it's a difficult thing to parse. We used to have, when I was growing up, and I was born in 1954. So, and my parents didn't want us to have a television in the house, and we didn't get one until I was about 9. because they wanted us to read. But they had radios. And when we got a TV, I used to watch TV at my friend's house and stuff, but when I was home, passed the time reading. All my friends were watching television. They were the first generation to do that. Their connection to, most of my friends, their connection to the world, the reality, had a much heavier influence of virtual from stuff on TV, Leave It to Beaver, whatever, all this stuff that was on Ozzie and Harriet and I Love Lucy and all of that crap. They would talk about this at school and playground or whatever, as if this is part of life. This is real. And it was a little different. I noticed it later. I didn't really notice it then. I noticed that I wasn't keeping up with it. And then I was lobbying with my parents for forever. I finally went out and bought. I went out and bought for $2 at an auction, a church auction, this TV that had a screen like this, and it was about that deep. I dragged it down to my house. I was about 7 years old. Down to the house, popped the back off it. I went down to the drugstore. I took all the tubes out of it, went down and bought new tubes and tried replacing the tubes. And my father saw me with the back of this television in my hands in it with a butter knife screwing around with it. He thought I was going to electrocute myself. And they said, all right. And they ended up. So anyway, when we were coming up, television was 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 in New York. So with CBS, NBC, Metro Media, Channel 5, which is now Fox, ABC, and then 2 independent stations in New York. One was owned by the Daily News newspaper, Channel 11. I forgot who owned Channel 9. And 13 was a educational station and became part of PBS ultimately. That was the full range of television. And they were all separately owned. So the news programs, they were kind of selling the same shit, but they were packaging it differently. And sometimes it was different shit from one to the other. They didn't always agree on everything. So the narratives, there were some fundamental narratives, America's, the paved gold streets and the, shining city on the sky and the most moral and God and, all this crap. But there were an awful lot of disagreements over policy, particularly local, New York City and New York State and regional, that you would see actually debated between stations and sometimes on the same stations. And then there were the movies, and, so new movies came out every week, 2 maybe, something like that. Hollywood was cranking out maybe 50 to 100 films a year tops. Mm-hmm. That was the full range. And then radio and FM radio up until the late 60s was in essence the same. It was a simulcast with the AM stations. So there were a lot of them. You had a lot of independent radio stations, but and a lot of them were very niche programming. And so that was the full range of propaganda outlets dumping stuff into people's heads. So from the time you woke up until the time you went to sleep at night, say, a kid, a 10-year-old kid, would be, 12, 14 hours, probably 2 or 3 hours worth of that time was spent consuming media produced for you. And the balance was living in the world. So as you learned and experienced things, it was mostly real, person to person. You learned, saying this or that might get you your ass beat. It might get a whole lot of things. You learn an awful lot about human beings by actually talking to them instead of engaging with a little box, including about yourself. This gradually has changed where we ended up with cable TV. I know here and around the metropolitan New York area, that was it's in the early mid 70s. We had FM radio, which became a separate thing towards the late 60s, and the underground, media for a while. With cable TV came public access television, and people started making their own television. I'd say, again, in metropolitan New York, that was around 76, 77. And that became a part of people's experience. And all the while, the media share of people's attention, people's interaction was growing. And then we had the internet.
Yeah.
And the internet allowed, people were already getting a taste of independent, personal, non-corporate, non-foundation, just regular folks media with public access television. Where I live in Westchester County, New York, there were a few of us that had quite a following covering local politics and events. There were lots of people that learned because we were forcing them to put the meetings on television. A lot of instances we didn't have to force them. The local politicians figured they would be TV stars if the meetings were broadcast, so they forced the cable companies to provide for that in the franchise agreements that they signed in. Cable companies and the internet companies that you deal with now, all of them that have wires and cable strung in the streets, they have to sign an agreement with the municipality who owns the streets to allow them to do that. And there are agreements that are drafted and effective between the municipalities and these companies that govern that relationship. And when they first started to do this in the 70s, media activists said, you know what? If you're going to use our streets, we want something too. You're going to be making a shitload of money off our people here, and you're going to be sort of the biggest, loudest voice in our community. We want a piece of that. And since you can have unlimited channels, as you were telling people when you're selling this stuff, give us a couple of them and give us a studio and some staff to train people so they can make television. And so we ended up in a lot of other places in the country too, including in Manhattan, for example, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, with people that were doing this stuff, programming this stuff. I would say from the late 70s up until the early mid 90s, with an awful lot of buy-in from audiences. And so, even though that share, I'm trying to illustrate a principle here, it's not so much a history lesson. Even though the share of people's attention that was being taken by media was larger, inside that there was like a feedback loop almost, or an opportunity for people to speak to each other inside that room too. And it was being done. And then the internet came and sort of exploded all of the metrics for that, where everyone could talk to anyone free. And that started really to blow out in, I'd say, maybe 93, 94. And we saw the rise of a whole lot of alternative media. Both, first you had all the indie media sites that were out, and a lot of people just doing their own thing. Yet what ends up happening is they took control of the internet. They've taken control or asserted control they already owned of things like Google, YouTube, etc. And all the problems that they have in terms of governing who sees what, from on high. And so, as we've had these multiple, multiplying channels of communication amongst all of us, they are more highly mediated than any time in history, really. You have computers that are governing our, they look for each and every little trend that goes on, and they find ways of mediating it. So we're in like the most difficult time in our species history to take sort of the temperature of everybody as we're facing a global war that might be the final global war, to ask them, do you think that this should be happening? And do you want to get involved to stop it? We're at the most disadvantaged position to do that we've ever been. Because now we have people who, from the time they're 3 or 4 years old, have a little box in their hand where about 90% of their interaction takes place. You see kids now, they sit next to each other on a couch and do the phone. They don't even talk to each other.
Good point.
Almost all their communications are mediated now. That's the point. And observed and processed.
Yeah. And just to add to what you're saying, that discourse is so unnatural. Like, I've been around for a long time. I've never had anyone call me like a racial slur in real life, like person to person, but online it happens all the time. Like, as soon as people disagree with me, like not as soon as, but half the time, sometimes when people disagree with me, they'll resort to calling me slurs and talking to me in a way that they're very unlikely to do if, we're talking here in person. So it's completely unnatural discourse. I agree with that. And, the algorithms do a good job of kind of placing people into echo chambers. So they're being shown people who already agree with them, or maybe radicalize them even more. And there isn't enough interaction. But the only slight pushback I would have is that I do think we have more tools at our disposal to organize now than we did in the past. The question is, are we actually going to use these tools to do that? Because as of right now, most people are using these tools to watch cat videos and insult people. So,
okay, so it's a war. And so, we're saying now, well, we have a lot of guns. We have some bazookas and we've got this and that or whatever. First, we have to take complete stock of what the enemy has and where they have it deployed and how they're using it and all of this stuff, where the vulnerability points are and all of that. And we're not even close to that yet.
No.
You're
Sorry,
saying exactly my point about when people are having contact, they won't do that. If for no other reason, they're going to face a real life ass whooping, which is not something that happens online. Like, you can just turn off the phone or whatever, but somebody's sitting there still going like this. Okay,
pretty much
encourages you from getting too out of whack.
Yeah. And sorry, really quick, I have some breaking news. Sorry, Matt, can I share that that tweet I just sent you? I do think it's relevant. Then we can get right back into this.
I already cropped it. It's ready to go. This just happened. This is what we were warning you guys of. This is it. This is the game they're playing, pitting us against each other. Netanyahu did it. He did it. According to Jackson Hinkle, broke this just a half hour ago. Breaking news. Netanyahu just went on Fox News to claim that radical Islamists are responsible for Charlie Kirk's assassination.
And funny story, just so everyone knows, the killer of RFK Sr. Was a Christian. However, the news came out and said, after everyone knew who he was, they could easily go do their own research. They blamed RFK Sr.'s assassination on Islamic extremism, despite the fact that his killer was a Palestinian Christian, because they didn't want people to put that together, that there were Christians in Palestine. They want people to think it's just Muslims over there and they're all bad.
And actually, it turns out even Robert Kennedy and lots of others believe that Sirhan was innocent.
Well, on top of that, we know we've heard of MK Ultra. We know how you can get and you can do whatever. So you can
be innocent and you did it because you just don't know you did it because you got I got you.
Yeah, I mean we still Mark David Chapman still doesn't know that he killed John Lennon. So there's that. I mean, seriously, like if people don't know, if people don't understand the technology that we have available, and if you want to argue about what we had available post World War II, and oh no, you can't do it, and the weather technology, oh, we don't have that, or if we did, we wouldn't use it in a bad way, or the mind control Manchurian candidate. I mean, you guys go ahead and argue all you want about we couldn't do it in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s. Guess what? We have Palantir now. We can do pre-crime, mother effers. Yeah. You are so screwed now with the AI technology now. There's nothing they can't do. So don't tell me that somebody isn't being mind controlled into doing something with the algorithms that are so available. They're having a field day with us these days. They're like, hey, can you believe, remember when it used to be a little hard for us to do this? Now they can do this in their sleep.
Yeah. And really quick, just to add to that, the heartbreaking video that's going around on social media right now of the Ukrainian immigrant getting stabbed on the bus. When the person who was guilty of that, I do believe he was guilty. And when you look at his rap sheet, I think that was completely on him. However, he did make a call from jail. And that call is now released and it's on social media. And the funny thing is, he claims that the government put something in his body that is controlling him and that made him do that. Now, I'm not saying I believe his story. And when you look at his background, he does actually have a very troubling past. However, that being said, that just goes to show you that people are aware now that they do have new technology coming out. And this isn't even getting into Neuralink. Like, what if that brain chip technology is more advanced than we know? So we don't know. So I don't believe that guy in particular. I'm just saying in general, this is entering the public discourse now. So that is good in a way.
When you're talking about technology, there's also just, socio-political technology. And that is, I mean, if you have a society where, millions of people are either homeless or have one foot out the door, millions and millions more, don't know if the electricity is going to be on tomorrow, don't have enough food for themselves or their kids, all kinds of mental, illness induced by the society on people. These kind of things are going to happen anyway. And what you're doing, your technology is A, knowing that these things are going to happen, and B, capitalizing on them. You take this event, and now I've been waiting for a black guy to kill a Ukrainian woman with video. Great, here we go, or whatever. Just in terms of the level of technology, and this is 2, 3, 4 years ago, I started to, I've got these thousands of videotapes going back 40-something years. And I decided, there's a lot of important stuff, historical value there, meetings and stuff, that I should start capturing it because the tape is disintegrating, and whatever. And so am I. So, I got a machine, it'll do it. And I've been, kind of religiously, as much as an atheist can muster, copying tapes. So one tape I popped in, was a tape. I had gone to my friend Errol's wedding, was held outside in the country a year or 3 after 9/11. And it was outside. There was maybe 100 people there, and it was all people from WBAI and friends. So there was all radio people. So it had a DJ and a sound system and a whole library of music. So me and a friend brought 2 cameras. They had on the one hand a little altar, chuppah, whatever, where the ceremony was going to take place. And then maybe 150 feet the other direction, a tent and party and dancing and all that stuff. So I was sitting with a fixed camera. I was waiting for them to come so I would get the ceremony. And while I was there, I just let the tape run in case I missed something, like they came or whatever when I blinked. And in the background, you could hear on the tape the music way over there. You can't make it out, but you can hear it for an hour and a half or whatever the hell the duration of the tape was. So I caught the ceremony on it. I captured the whole tape because that's what I'm doing. And I uploaded, like I'm doing, to YouTube and to a couple of other sites just to make sure they survive. And I sent it to YouTube at about 12:30 in the afternoon. Now, it was an hour and a half long tape. By about 12:40, I got 35 copyright hits. Wow. This thing had analyzed the content of this hour and a half long video as I uploaded it.
Yeah,
Researched the, who it belonged to, notified them of a copyright violation, notified me that they were demonetizing that. I couldn't use it because it belonged to someone else, and set up the accounting and everything. All of this, I don't know. One person, I forget how many people per hour upload to YouTube, but they did all of that faster than it would take to listen to it.
Well,
So
yeah.
what I'm saying is that,
That's where
and
we're
this
at.
is just YouTube statistics analysis. Whoever is really interested in, I've got all this power and I'm keeping it, has unlimited resources available. The machines can already listen to everything that's going on around us and act.
Yeah. So that's it. Well, yeah.
We're up against a tough thing. The good news is
What's the good news? John, what's the good news? Tell us some good news before you go.
History shows us the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Okay, let me take a moment to introduce you to our good friends over at World Harvest Food Bank right here in LA. World Harvest has been serving families across Los Angeles for 18 years now, and they started with this simple idea. Everyone deserves access to healthy, affordable food no matter what they're going through. With their Cart with a Heart program, families can walk away with a full cart of groceries, fresh produce, dairy, meat, and pantry supplies for just a $50 contribution. That's for the entire cart. That same cart would cost over $300 at a typical grocery store. At World Harvest, everyone is welcome. They don't ask for income verification, ID, or any paperwork. No. Basically, their doors are open to anyone who's doing their best, but just needs a little extra push to get by. If you're an Angelino like me, you know the times have been tough here. First with all the union strikes, the LA fires, and now the ICE raids going on. It seems like we're living in a constant state of uncertainty. And that's why it's so important to support local charities like World Harvest, because they aren't just helping the community. They're an essential function in its very survival. World Harvest is located at Venice and Arlington. And right now, you can use our special discount code THL20 for 20% off your contribution amount at checkout. And if you're not in the LA area, you can still help out with a $50 donation, which will provide a full cart of food for a family by going to worldharvestfoodbank.org or scan the QR code for more info. Or you can just spread the word. Follow them online. Let people know they're here for them, because at the end of the day, it's about providing choice, access, and relief without barriers. World Harvest Food Bank. End hunger now.